All right, let's talk a little bit more about our pages and how we can go ahead and create and manage those on any of our sites. In Liferay 7.1, we now have a new feature that we can work with to have a bit more flexibility with how we actually display our pages to our users. And we also have some new features for the pages themselves as well. So once we have our site set up and we're creating pages, we can use some of those page templates like we talked about in the first section of this chapter. We might want to consider how we want to actually display our navigation to our users. In order to have some flexibility, Liferay 7.1 has introduced the concept of the navigation menus, okay? Now, obviously, what I'm not saying is that Liferay never had navigation menus before, but now we have more control over what we can actually do with our navigation menus, okay? In the build section of our site administration panel, we not only have the pages section, which we've seen before, which allow us to create pages, but we have the navigation menus section as well. And these allow us to create as many navigation options as we need, and we can use those throughout our site as needed as well. So if there's some pages that need sort of the main navigation, we can go ahead and do that with the navigation menus. If we want to provide a footer navigation or perhaps a column navigation for the left side or something along those lines, we can create as many of those navigation menus as we need, and then we can set them up using the navigation widget. Now, in addition to our new navigation menus feature, we also have a new concept called display pages. Now, if you're coming from a previous version of Liferay, even 7.0, you may be familiar with the concept of the content display page. Okay. We're using some similar terminology here, but this is actually a different concept that is taking advantage of the new page fragments features. Okay. What this essentially allows us to do is to create a specialized page that maps our web content structures to a fragment instead of a template. Now, why might I want to do this? This would be in the case where, let's say, Livingston Hotels and Resorts has our press releases, and we want to give users a special designated page to read those articles in full. Okay, perhaps we have a list, a self-updating list, if we're using the asset publisher, of some abstracts or something along those lines. The user comes in and clicks read more. It's going to direct them to a special display page where they can read that article in more details. It's going to be presented as a nicely designed page fragment. All right, so what this might look like is if I create a structure, so we've already created our new structure, so we have a number of different fields that we can fill out. Again, instead of using a template and having the front-end developers grab the structure information and go from there, I can actually just take some of the fragments that we have and we can map those fields in the structure to the fragment. So again, so when a user clicks on the read more, they're going to see the page fragment, but they're going to see all the content from our structure. So this essentially allows us to use fragments as the presentation layer for our structures rather than templates. So we can actually use web content and fragments together. All right. So to summarize some of these new features, what we now have is the ability not only to create pages, but we can create special pages and also control how to present them to users through the use of navigation menus. All right. The special pages we can create are display pages that allow us to map our web content structures to a fragment that will be displayed on that particular page. And then we can set it up so that there is a special URL given to the web content itself. We call this a canonical URL that will allow users to directly link to that special display page as well as its presentation in the fragment. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at an example of what this would look like for the Livingston Hotels and Resorts.